With the ever-changing world of crime and drama, the nation's police departments need the equipment to keep up with them. But at what point does the advancement of law enforcement need to be put on hold and the protection of the nation's citizens be put first?
What folks don't realize is that we do have some pretty high level intense calls where we do need our armored vehicles and we do need that kind of SWAT response. Thankfully, it doesn't happen a lot, but there's definitely room for it in the city of Bend. And then as far as across the nation, there's definitely a need for it.
Police departments are being given the opportunity to send in a grant to receive funding towards military-grade equipment. This is equipment including things like automatic weapons, armored vehicles, combat training, chemical weapons, and more.
The biggest thing that I think folks need to realize is that with the armored vehicles especially, those are to protect us as well as to protect everybody else and to get us to the scene safely. So if we can't get there safely, then we can't handle the issue. So being a patrol officer, I don't use a lot of the really specialized stuff. That's for our CERT or SWAT team. They're the ones who usually use that. But I have driven our, we call it the Bearcat. It's basically an armored vehicle. And it's very cool. It's got bulletproof glass, bulletproof sides, the whole gamut, and it's a really, really neat vehicle. We've done a couple trainings with it, and I haven't had to drive it in a real life situation yet, but we're all trained to do that in case we need to. And it's kind of laid out like an ambulance, so the back two doors open up, and then you can have a lot of people inside, like in the what would be like the bed of a truck, except it's a van. And you know, it's a good way for us to get a lot of cops to the scene quickly, get them out quickly, have armored doors that open so that we can use the doors as shields, all those kinds of things. So that's been a really, really cool tool. We've only had it for about 9 months, and we've actually deployed it several times on things like barricaded people who are in houses who might be threatening to shoot themselves or somebody else or us. So that's been really cool. I have an AR-15, so basically the civilian version of an M5, and it is not fully automatic. I think we have the capability for some of our SWAT guys to have fully automatic weapons. I don't have one myself. They also are issued a couple different types of like tear gas and smoke canisters and those kinds of things that we patrol guys aren't certified to use. The one other tool that I do use and haven't had to use thankfully on patrol is a shotgun, and we carry less than lethal rounds. And the reason they're called less than lethal is that they can still cause death if they're not used in the right manner, or if the subject who's being shot at happens to move and that they get struck by a beanbag in the wrong kind of area of their body. But what the purpose of that is that it is one step lower than what we would consider lethal force. So maybe somebody who's holding a knife or other object, if we can hit them with that beanbag round, then that could be a plus for everybody involved. So those are some of the things that I've used.
Those aren't the only reasons why police are trying to get military equipment. With civilians now being able to purchase automatic weapons, police have to keep up with the rise of weaponry available to the community. 20 years ago, the average store robbery usually involved a small firearm. Now a person can walk into a convenience store with an assault rifle, which may or may not be automatic.
I think that that people who have that fear, it may be founded depending on that person's background. I mean, I have been to the East Coast. I've seen kind of how police work over there, and there's definitely that feeling among folks. But my philosophy has always been that if you're not doing anything wrong, you really don't have anything to worry about. And our main goal, at least here in Bend, is to protect people from other folks who might be out to hurt folks and things like that. So the point I'm getting at is, if you're not doing anything wrong, I don't think you have to worry about it. If you see those armored vehicles rolling down the street, it's for a reason, and we don't just do that for fun unless it's in a parade. Although there is the argument too that we are fighting a war in this nation, and that you can definitely look at that. I read a statistic recently that more police officers were actually killed in the line of duty last year than soldiers abroad, and so that certainly comes into my mind when I'm out on the street. And frankly, my number one goal is to go home to my husband and my family at night, and so whatever I need to do in order to make that happen, that's within the boundaries of the law, then I'm certainly going to do that. But I think as far as militarization and the whole philosophy surrounding that, it's that we have tools, and a lot of those tools are coming from the military. A lot of our police officers are former military. And so if we have tools that work and have been proven to work, then why shouldn't we be using those? Because I do feel like I wouldn't go so far as to say that we're under attack, as police officers in this nation, but it's certainly, kind of a scary time to be a police officer. So it's kind of interesting that it's coinciding with that sort of militaristic approach to things. But again, my thought is if we have the tools and the tools work, then we should use them for sure.
This kind of stuff has been going on since the early 1990s, but hasn't been as apparent due to the lack of the need for this equipment. Events like the Boston Marathon bombing, World Trade Center attack, Ferguson riots are examples of when militarized police officers were used.
My personal opinion is that it was justified. I've read the report, I've read the officer's statements, and a lot of the witness statements don't corroborate what happened or the forensic evidence. And for me, I tend to take the forensic evidence kind of with more weight than anything else. And just due to the fact of where Michael Brown ended up having his wounds, where the officer Darren Wilson, where he had his wounds, everything matched up really well with Darren Wilson's testimony. And so that to me speaks volumes. And just on another note, I feel really sorry for Darren Wilson because of the fact that he's had to leave this dream career and he's had death threats and all those kinds of things. And I wish that people would take the time to learn the facts of the case. And I understand that that folks feel that race played an issue, but I don't think that that was the case. In fact, I think last year when you take basically the ratios of whites killed by officers and blacks killed by officers, way more white people are killed by officers. So this is not any kind of race war at all, but I'm getting off on a tangent, but I do believe that Darren Wilson was justified, and I'm sad that we all had to see kind of what happened to him. And obviously I'm sad for the death of Michael Brown too. Nobody wants to pull the trigger on something like that. So
it was because of these fears that SWAT teams were created. SWAT stands for Special Weapons and Tactics, implying the idea that they will be using a higher grade of weapon. These teams are given military training and the equipment to execute the most dangerous kinds of operations that take place right in your backyard.
So the first level is actually what I'm doing right now, which is presence. And a lot of times presence can sort of help diffuse a situation. So if someone's angry, someone isn't getting their way, two people are fighting, just the police showing up a lot of times can be not necessarily what we would call a use of force, but definitely that, kind of coming in and calming things down. The next level would be like communicating kind of what you're saying within what we have is called we used to call it a continuum, but then we changed the wording. We didn't want continuum to mean that you had to do each thing in order. The way that our policy reads is that the person that you're interacting with, they are really the ones who choose what level of force you have to go to. So for instance, I'm not going to jump to lethal force unless I'm presented with some kind of situation that would warrant that. So some of the levels where we actually start talking about using force, the first level would be physical force. And that could be something as simple as me taking the arm of a drunk person in a bar and leading them out of the bar if they're being squirrely or whatnot. It also could involve like impact weapons, like a baton or a flashlight, something like that. That would be kind of more of the serious physical force type level. We have tasers. That is also a serious force level item, and those are really, really effective in certain situations. A lot of times you won't get what's called the probe spread in order to make it a very effective hit, because the probes have to be pretty far apart in order for the electricity to travel well. In the wintertime, we have a lot of folks who wear the heavy Carhartt jackets, things like that, and if the probe can't actually make good contact, then it doesn't really work that effectively too. So tasers aren't perfect. They also only have a range of about 20 feet on them, so that is something that we have to take into consideration too. And then we have two lethal use of force options, one being handgun and the other being what's called a carotid hold, which is, it looks like a chokehold if you're doing it to somebody, but you're really just closing off these two veins or arteries right here. So you're not blocking their windpipe, but you're actually blocking the blood flow to their brain, and then the person passes out. So you have just enough time to basically get them in handcuffs, and then they wake back up again. So we also can use cars. So for instance, if I was being shot at and I was in my car, I could justifiably run that person down with my own car, which is crazy to think about. But when it comes to life and death, we are justified to use whatever means necessary in order to save our lives or the lives of somebody else. So that's kind of the progression there. So.